I spent 25 years building a successful video game company. Last month, my business partner and best friend died unexpectedly. At the funeral, I met his 19-year-old son who I never knew existed. Now the kid wants to take his father's place in the company. I was ready to refuse until I saw what he brought to the meeting, a game prototype his father and I designed in college but never built. Now I must decide whether to trust him or protect everything I've worked for. My name is Marcus Chen. I'm 47 years old and the co-founder and CEO of Horizon Games, one of the most successful independent game development studios in the industry. This is the story of how a shocking discovery at my best friend's funeral changed everything I thought I knew about my past and forced me to make the hardest decision of my professional life. It was a rainy Tuesday when we buried David Kelly. The weather seemed appropriate, gray and somber, the heavens themselves mourning a life cut short. David had died of a sudden heart attack at the age of 48, leaving behind a successful company, a catalog of beloved games, and a hole in my life that I couldn't begin to fill. We had met in college, two computer science nerds with big dreams about making video games that would change the world. We'd spent countless nights in our dorm room, sketching out game designs, arguing about mechanics, and plotting our future empire. David was the creative genius, the one with the wild ideas and artistic vision. I was the pragmatist, the one who could translate his dreams into code and business plans. After graduation, we'd founded Horizon Games with nothing but our combined savings of $8,000 and a prototype of our first game. 25 years later, we had a staff of 70, a modern office in Seattle, and a reputation for creating innovative, narrative-driven games that pushed the boundaries of the medium. And now David was gone. I stood at the gravesite, listening to the priest's words without really hearing them. Around me were familiar faces, employees from Horizon, industry colleagues, David's few family members. His parents had passed years ago, and he had never married. Horizon was his family, our games his children. Or so I had thought. The funeral service ended, and people began to drift away, heading to the reception at a nearby restaurant. I lingered, not yet ready to leave David behind. That's when I noticed him, a young man standing a few yards away, staring at the fresh grave with an intensity that matched my own grief. He was tall and lanky, with a mop of dark hair that reminded me startlingly of David in our college days. But it was more than the hair, it was something in the set of his jaw, the slope of his shoulders. A familiarity that tugged at my memory. As if sensing my scrutiny, he looked up. Our eyes met across the space between us, and I felt a jolt of recognition, though I was certain I had never seen him before. He approached me, steps hesitant but determined. "You're Marcus Chen," he said. Not a question. "Yes," I replied, studying him more closely. "I'm sorry, have we met?" He shook his head. "No. But I'd know you anywhere from Dad's descriptions." The world seemed to tilt slightly. "Dad's?" "I'm Elliot," he said, extending his hand. "Elliot Kelly. David was my father." I shook his hand automatically, my mind struggling to process his words. David had a son. A grown son. How was that possible? In 25 years of friendship and partnership, David had never once mentioned having a child. "That's not possible," I said, the words out before I could stop them. "David never had children. He would have told me." A flicker of pain crossed Elliot's face. "He didn't tell a lot of people. My mom and he, it was complicated. But I assure you, he was my father." I studied his face more carefully, and the resemblance became undeniable. The same blue eyes, the same slight cleft in his chin, even the same way of tilting his head slightly when making a point. This was David's son, without question. "How old are you?" I asked, though I was already calculating in my head. 19, he replied. "I'm a sophomore at Digitech." Digitech, the same technical college where David and I had met. The coincidence seemed too perfect, too deliberate. "Did David know about you?" I asked, the question blunt but necessary. Elliot nodded. He's been part of my life since I was 14. When I got interested in game development, he started to reach out more. We've been pretty close the last few years. 5 years. David had known his son for 5 years and had never said a word to me about it. The realization stung more than I wanted to admit. I see, I said, struggling to keep my voice neutral. And your mother? Monica Reeves. She lives in Portland now. The name hit me like a physical blow. Monica. Of course. David's college girlfriend, before we started Horizon. They had dated for most of our junior year, a whirlwind romance that had ended abruptly just before graduation. David had never fully explained the breakup, and I had been too busy with our fledgling company to press for details. Now, 20 years later, the missing pieces were falling into place, forming a picture I never expected. I'd like to talk more, Elliot said, breaking into my thoughts. About Dad, about Horizon. There's a lot I want to know. I hesitated. My mind was still reeling from the revelation, but something in his expression, so like David's when he was determined, made it impossible to refuse. Come to the reception, I heard myself say. We can talk there. He nodded, a flash of relief crossing his face. Thank you. I'll be there. I watched him walk away, this unexpected extension of my best friend, and felt a complex mix of emotions I couldn't begin to untangle. Shock, certainly. Hurt that David had kept such a monumental secret. Curiosity about the young man who shared his blood. And beneath it all, a deep, resonant grief that seemed to reach new depths. At the reception, I found myself watching Elliot from across the room. He moved through the crowd with an awkward grace, speaking briefly with people but never staying long with any group. A few times, I saw recognition flash across someone's face, another person who knew David well enough to see his echo in this young man. Eventually, he made his way to my table, where I sat with a few of Horizon's senior staff. They excused themselves tactfully as he approached, leaving us alone. Thank you for inviting me, he said, taking one of the empty seats. This is harder than I expected. Losing a parent always is, I said softly. Even when the relationship is complicated. He nodded, his eyes shadowed with grief. We were just starting to really know each other, you know. And now. I'm sorry, I said, and meant it. Whatever complicated feelings I had about David's secrecy, this young man had lost his father just as he was finding him. That was a tragedy in its own right. He talked about you all the time, Elliot said after a moment. Called you the brother he never had. The words were both comforting and painful. We were close, I agreed. Which is why it's hard to understand why he never told me about you. Elliot's fingers traced patterns on the tablecloth. He said he was afraid. Not just of how you'd react, but of how it would change things between you. He didn't want you to see him differently. As what? A father? That would hardly have changed our friendship. No, Elliot said, looking up to meet my eyes directly. As someone who walked away from his responsibility. Who wasn't there for his child. The words hung in the air between us, heavy with implication. David, my loyal, ethical, stand-up friend, had abandoned his pregnant girlfriend and unborn child. It was so contrary to everything I knew about him that I almost couldn't process it. He was young, Elliot continued, as if sensing my struggle. And scared. Mom didn't tell him about me until after I was born, and by then, you guys were already starting Horizon. He made a choice. He shrugged slightly. I'm not saying it was the right one, but it was the one he made. And your mother? She was okay with this arrangement? A flicker of something, anger. Resentment, crossed Elliot's face. She remarried when I was 3. Paul, my stepdad, raised me as his own. I didn't even know about David until my parents divorced when I was 13. That's when Mom finally told me the truth. And that's when David came into your life. Elliot nodded. I reached out to him first, actually. Sent him an email. I wasn't sure he'd respond, but he did. We started slowly, emails, then phone calls. The first time we met in person was on my 15th birthday. I tried to remember where David had been for Elliot's 15th birthday. Had he made an excuse to me? Had I even noticed his absence? The thought that David had been living this double life, keeping this enormous secret while we worked side by side every day, was disorienting. "Why are you telling me all this now?" I asked. "Why come to the funeral, introduce yourself to me?" Elliot straightened in his chair, a new determination entering his expression. "Because I want to work at Horizon. I want to take Dad's place." The statement was so unexpected, so audacious, that for a moment I could only stare at him. Take his place? Elliot, you're 19. A sophomore in college. David was a master game designer with 25 years of experience. No one can take his place, least of all someone who hasn't even finished their education. "I know I can't replace him professionally," Elliot said quickly. "Not yet. But legally, I'm his heir. His shares in the company, his seat on the board, those pass to me. I checked with his attorney. It's all in his will." This was the first I was hearing about David's will. We had never discussed succession planning in detail. We were only in our 40s, after all, with decades ahead of us. Or so we had thought. "Even if that's true," I said carefully, "owning shares doesn't qualify you to work at Horizon. And board membership is about more than legal inheritance. It requires approval from the other members." "I know that," Elliot said, undeterred. "I'm not asking for a handout. I'm asking for a chance. I'm good, Marcus. Really good. I've been coding since I was 12. I've released 3 indie mobile games already. Small stuff, but well reviewed. And I have ideas. Ideas Dad believed in." His earnestness was painfully familiar, the same passion I had seen in David's eyes when we were starting out. But passion wasn't enough to run a multi-million-dollar game studio. "I understand your connection to Horizon through your father," I said, trying to be gentle but firm. "But this isn't how the industry works. You need to finish school, build experience, prove yourself. If you're as talented as you say, there will be a place for you in the industry. Maybe even at Horizon someday, through the proper channels." Elliot's expression hardened slightly. "I'm not asking to be CEO, Marcus. I'm asking for an internship, a junior position, anything to get my foot in the door. To learn the company from the inside, understand what Dad built." Is that really so unreasonable? Put that way, it wasn't. But something about the situation still felt off. The timing, the sudden appearance, the convenient inheritance, it all seemed too calculated, too convenient. "Let me think about it," I said finally. "This is a lot to process, Elliot. I'm still coming to terms with losing David, let alone discovering he had a son he never told me about." Elliot nodded, disappointment clear in his eyes but accepting the noncommittal answer. "I understand. Here's my card. Call me when you're ready to talk more." He handed me a business card, simple, professional, with his name and contact information. At the bottom was a small logo, a stylized Horizon line with a rising sun. Almost, but not quite, like Horizon Games' own logo. As he walked away, I turned the card over in my hands, feeling like I had just experienced the first tremors of an earthquake that could reshape my entire life. The next few weeks were a blur of activity. With David gone, I had to step into roles he had always handled: creative direction, media relations, industry networking. The company was stable, but his absence was felt in 100 small ways every day. Games in development needed guidance, staff needed reassurance, and partners needed to be convinced that Horizon would continue to deliver quality products without its co-founder. Through it all, Elliot's card sat on my desk, a constant reminder of the decision waiting to be made. Several times I picked up the phone, intending to call him, only to put it down again. What would I say? How could I trust someone who had appeared out of nowhere, claiming a heritage that gave him legal rights to part of my company? I ran background checks, of course. Elliot Kelly was indeed a sophomore at Digitech, studying game design and computer science. His mother was Monica Reeves, now Monica Hartman, living in Portland as he had said. He had released 3 mobile games under the label EK Games, all with decent reviews but limited commercial success. Everything checked out. I even called Monica, a conversation that was as awkward as it was illuminating. She confirmed everything Elliot had told me about his relationship with David, adding that David had been providing financial support for Elliot's education for the past 5 years. When I asked why David had kept Elliot's existence a secret from me, she hesitated. That was my condition, initially, she admitted. When Elliot first reached out to David, I was afraid. Afraid that David would swoop in with his success and money and try to take over, to be the fun dad while I had been the one doing the daily work of parenting for 14 years. So I asked him to keep it quiet, to build a relationship with Elliot slowly and privately. And later? When they had established a relationship? Monica sighed. That was David's choice. He said it was complicated, that he didn't know how to tell you after keeping it secret for so long. Honestly, I think he was ashamed. Not of Elliot, but of his own past choices. The conversation left me with more questions than answers, but at least I was satisfied that Elliot was who he claimed to be. The question remained, what was I going to do about him? 3 weeks after the funeral, I finally called the number on Elliot's card. He answered on the second ring. Mr. Chen, he said, a note of surprise in his voice. I wasn't sure I'd hear from you. Marcus, please, I corrected. I'd like to meet to discuss your proposal. Are you free tomorrow? Yes, absolutely. The eagerness in his voice was palpable. Where and when? Horizon offices, 10 a.m. Ask for me at reception. I'll be there. Thank you for giving me this chance. I wasn't sure I was giving him anything yet, but I kept that thought to myself. See you tomorrow, Elliot. The next morning, I arrived at the office earlier than usual, wanting some quiet time to prepare for the meeting. But as I approached the reception area, I was surprised to see Elliot already there, a full 30 minutes before our scheduled time. He stood as I entered, a leather messenger bag slung over his shoulder. Marcus. Good morning. I know I'm early, but I wanted to make sure I found the place without any issues. His eagerness was both endearing and concerning. I nodded, gesturing for him to follow me. Let's talk in my office. As we walked through the open workspace, I noticed several curious glances from employees. News travels fast in a company our size, and rumors about David's secret son had undoubtedly spread. I'd have to address that eventually, but not today. My office was at the far end of the floor, a corner space with windows overlooking downtown Seattle. David's office, now empty, was adjacent, separated by a glass wall. I had deliberately avoided looking into it as I passed, the sight of his empty chair still too painful. Have a seat, I said, indicating one of the chairs in front of my desk. I took my own seat, trying to project a calm authority I didn't entirely feel. Before we begin, I want to be clear about something. This meeting is exploratory. I'm not making any promises about a position at Horizon, regardless of your legal inheritance of David's shares. Elliot nodded, his expression serious. I understand. And I appreciate you meeting with me at all. Good. Now, tell me about your experience. You mentioned releasing mobile games. For the next 20 minutes, Elliot talked about his background in programming and game design. He was self-taught initially, then formally educated at Digitech. His 3 mobile games were puzzle games with narrative elements, niche but well-crafted. As he spoke, I could see both his passion and his knowledge. He wasn't just a hobbyist, but someone who genuinely understood game development. Why Horizon specifically? I asked when he paused. With your skills, you could apply to any number of game companies. Ones without the emotional complications. Elliot leaned forward slightly. Because Horizon is special. It's not just about commercial success or technical innovation. Your games have heart. They tell stories that matter. That's because of you and Dad, the vision you built together. I don't want to work anywhere else. It was a good answer, earnest and flattering. But I still wasn't convinced. Let's address the elephant in the room, I said. You're David's heir. According to his will, you inherit his 45% share of the company and his seat on the board. That puts you in a powerful position for someone with no industry experience. How can I be sure you won't use that position to force your way into the company, regardless of merit? Elliot seemed genuinely taken aback by the question. That's not who I am. And it's not what Dad would have wanted. He built Horizon from nothing, alongside you. He wouldn't want me to damage that legacy out of entitlement. You barely knew him, I pointed out, the words harsher than I intended. A flash of hurt crossed Elliot's face, but he recovered quickly. You're right. I didn't get as much time with him as I wanted. But in the time we did have, he taught me about Horizon, about the values it stands for. About creating games that respect players' intelligence and emotions. I want to honor that, not undermine it. I studied him, trying to see past the surface resemblance to David, to gauge his true character and intentions. He met my gaze steadily, without flinching. There was determination there, yes, but also a genuine earnestness that was hard to fake. What exactly are you proposing? I asked finally. An apprenticeship, he replied promptly. 3 months, unpaid. Put me on any team, give me any task, no matter how basic. Let me prove myself from the ground up, just like any other new hire would have to. If at the end of those 3 months you don't think I have what it takes, I'll walk away. I'll still own my shares, but I won't push for a role in the company. It was a reasonable offer, and the fact that he wasn't asking for special treatment or a guaranteed position spoke in his favor. Still, I hesitated. And if I say no? If I don't offer you this apprenticeship at all? Elliot was quiet for a moment, considering. Then I'll finish school and apply again through normal channels. And in the meantime, I'll learn everything I can about being a responsible shareholder. Because regardless of whether I work here, I am part of Horizon now. Again, a mature response. He wasn't threatening to use his inheritance as leverage, but he was also realistic about his position. It was a delicate balance, and he was walking it well. I was about to respond when my eye caught something in his open messenger bag, a flash of familiar color and design. What's that? I asked, pointing to the edge of what looked like a sketchbook. Elliot glanced down, then reached into his bag. Oh, this. I was going to show you later, but... He pulled out a worn notebook with a distinctive blue cover, the pages dog-eared and yellowing with age. I stared at it, recognition flooding through me. That's Dad's old design journal, Elliot confirmed. From college. He gave it to me on my 18th birthday. Said it contained some of his best ideas, ones he never got to implement. With slightly shaking hands, I took the notebook from him. It was indeed David's journal from our college days, the one where he had sketched out dozens of game concepts, mechanics, and characters. I had a matching one somewhere in my own archives, though mine had been more focused on technical specifications and code snippets. I opened it to a random page and was instantly transported back 25 years, to our cramped dorm room, David pacing as he described his latest vision while I typed furiously on our shared computer, trying to capture his ideas in code. I can't believe he kept this, I murmured, turning the pages carefully. So many memories, so many ideas, some that had made it into our games over the years, others still waiting to be explored. He said it was one of his most treasured possessions, Elliot said quietly. He wanted me to have it, to understand where Horizon began. I looked up at him, seeing him with new eyes. This wasn't just David's son showing up to claim an inheritance. This was David's son, entrusted with his earliest dreams, the raw material of our shared vision. There's something specific I wanted to show you, Elliot continued, reaching for the journal. He flipped to a section near the back, marked with a faded yellow sticky note. This. The page showed a sketch of a game world unlike anything Horizon had ever produced. It was a vast, interconnected series of islands floating in a sea of clouds, each with its own distinct ecosystem and civilization. Alongside the sketch were David's notes, describing a game where players would navigate between these islands, solving puzzles and forging connections, gradually bringing a fractured world back together. I remembered this concept. Archipelago, I breathed, the name coming back to me immediately. We designed this our senior year. Dad called it the one that got away, Elliot said. He said you guys were too focused on getting Horizon off the ground to develop it, but that he always regretted not returning to it. That was true. We had been so consumed with our first commercial game, so desperate to establish ourselves in the industry, that many of our more ambitious concepts had been shelved. Archipelago had been particularly special to David, a game about healing a divided world, about building bridges instead of walls. He talked about it a lot, Elliot continued. About how it was ahead of its time back then, but how modern technology could finally do it justice. He hesitated, then added, I've been working on a prototype. My head snapped up. A prototype? Elliot nodded, reaching into his bag again and pulling out a tablet. It's very basic, just a proof of concept. But I wanted to show you what might be possible. He powered on the tablet and opened an application. A beautifully rendered 3D model of the island world from David's sketch rotated on the screen. With a few taps, Elliot navigated through the environment, showing how players would move between islands, interact with the environment, and solve puzzles to create bridges of light connecting the floating lands. I watched, mesmerized. It was Archipelago as David had envisioned it, but enhanced with modern graphics and mechanics. Seeing it come to life after all these years was like hearing an echo from the past, a voice I thought had been silenced forever. This is remarkable, I said when Elliot finished the demonstration. How long have you been working on this? About 6 months, he replied. Dad gave me access to all his notes, his current ideas for it. We were actually collaborating on it, though he insisted I take the lead on the development. He said. Elliot's voice caught slightly. He said he wanted it to be my introduction to Horizon. A bridge between his legacy and my future. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. A game about building bridges, serving as a bridge between generations. It was exactly the kind of meaningful connection David would have appreciated. Why didn't he tell me about this? I asked, still struggling with the secrecy that had apparently defined David's final years. Elliot looked uncomfortable. He wanted to surprise you. He said when the prototype was ready, he was going to bring me in, introduce me properly, and pitch Archipelago as Horizon's next major project. With me on the development team. It sounded like David, always a flair for the dramatic, always believing that the perfect moment would present itself. Except this time, that moment had never come. I sat back in my chair, my mind racing. Everything had changed in the span of a few minutes. What had started as a courtesy meeting with a dubious air had transformed into something else entirely, a glimpse of what could have been, and perhaps what still could be. I need time to think about this, I said finally. Not just about you joining Horizon, but about Archipelago as a potential project. It's a major decision, one that affects the whole company. Elliot nodded, disappointment visible in his eyes but tempered with understanding. I get it. It's a lot to process. Leave the prototype with me, I said. And I'd like to borrow the journal, if that's okay. Just for a few days. Of course, he agreed immediately. Take as long as you need. As he prepared to leave, I found myself asking one more question. Why show me this now? You could have led with the prototype, used it to guarantee a position here. Elliot paused at the door. Because that's not what this is about for me. I'm not trying to leverage Dad's ideas to force my way in. I want to earn my place here, based on my own merit. He smiled slightly. The prototype was my backup plan, in case you weren't convinced by my dazzling personality and impeccable qualifications. Despite everything, I laughed. The self-deprecating humor was pure David. I'll be in touch, I promised. Soon. After Elliot left, I spent hours going through the journal and exploring the prototype more thoroughly. The concept was solid, the execution promising. With Horizon's resources behind it, Archipelago could be something special. But the decision wasn't just about the game. It was about Elliot, about David's legacy, about the future of the company we had built together. It was about trust and forgiveness and moving forward. That evening, I called an emergency meeting of Horizon's senior leadership team. I explained the situation, David's son, the inheritance, the Archipelago prototype. I showed them Elliot's work, shared my own conflicted feelings, and asked for their input. The discussion was lengthy and at times heated. Some were concerned about bringing in an untested newcomer, especially one with such a large ownership stake. Others were excited about Archipelago and impressed by what Elliot had accomplished on his own. Questions were raised about David's secrecy, about Elliot's true motivations, about the risks of mixing family dynamics with business decisions. In the end, though, there was a consensus: give Elliot his 3-month apprenticeship, evaluate him fairly, and in the meantime, begin exploratory development on Archipelago. If the concept proved viable and Elliot proved capable, we would move forward with both. The next day, I called Elliot with the news. His excitement was palpable, even over the phone. "Thank you, Marcus," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I won't let you down. I won't let Dad down. This is just the beginning," I cautioned. "The real work starts now." "I'm ready," he assured me. "When do I start?" "Monday, 9 a.m. "And Elliot?" "Bring your best ideas for Archipelago. We're going to need them." That was 6 months ago. Elliot's apprenticeship turned into a junior designer position, which has since evolved into a key role on the Archipelago development team. The game is still in early production, but the concept has been greenlit for full development, with a tentative release date 2 years from now. Watching Elliot work has been an education in itself. He has David's creative spark, his ability to think beyond conventional game design, but he also has a technical precision that reminds me of myself at his age. He's not afraid to challenge ideas, to push for better solutions, but he does so with a respect for the team and the process that belies his youth. There have been bumps along the way, of course. The revelation of David's secret son created ripples throughout the company. Some longtime employees felt betrayed that David had kept such a significant part of his life hidden. Others were skeptical of Elliot's sudden appearance and rapid integration into the company. As for Elliot's inheritance, we've worked out an arrangement that respects both his legal rights and the company's stability. He holds David's shares but has agreed to a voting trust arrangement for the first 3 years, giving him time to learn the business side of Horizon before exercising full shareholder rights. His board seat is currently occupied by a trustee, with Elliot attending meetings as an observer, again with a plan to transition to full board membership when he's ready. It's not a perfect solution, but it's one that honors both David's wishes and the company's needs. And it gives Elliot the time and space to grow into his role, to earn the respect of the team rather than demanding it by virtue of his name or inheritance. As for me, I'm still coming to terms with David's secrecy. Some days, I'm angry that he didn't trust me enough to share this part of his life. Other days, I understand his fear of judgment, his desire to protect both his reputation and his relationship with a son he was just getting to know. But mostly, I'm grateful. Grateful that David found a way to connect with his son before it was too late. Grateful that Elliot found his way to Horizon, bringing with him not just his own talents but a piece of David's legacy that might otherwise have been lost. Last week, I was working late, reviewing the latest build of Archipelago. The game is taking shape, the floating islands becoming more detailed, the mechanics more refined. As I navigated through the world David had imagined all those years ago, I felt a sense of completion, of things coming full circle. A knock on my office door interrupted my thoughts. It was Elliot, also working late. "How's it looking?" he asked, nodding toward my screen. "Good," I said. "Really good. The new island design is exactly what we needed." He smiled, pleased but not satisfied. "Still needs work on the bridge mechanics. The connection needs to feel more meaningful." "We'll get there," I assured him. "It's a marathon, not a sprint." He nodded, then hesitated, seeming to debate whether to say something more. Finally, he asked, "Do you think he'd be proud of the game? Of me?" The vulnerability in the question caught me off guard. For all his confidence and talent, Elliot was still a young man seeking approval from a father he'd barely known. In that moment, he wasn't the heir to a game development empire or a promising designer. He was just a son, missing his dad. "Yes," I said without hesitation. "He'd be incredibly proud of both." Elliot nodded, blinking rapidly. "Thanks. That means a lot, coming from you." He turned to go, then stopped at the door. "You know, he was right about you." "Oh. What did he say?" "That you were the best friend anyone could ask for. That you'd do the right thing, even when it was hard." Elliot smiled slightly. "Especially when it was hard." After he left, I sat for a long time, thinking about David, about Elliot, about the strange, unexpected path that had led us here. I thought about trust and legacy and second chances. About bridges between islands, between generations, between the past and the future. 25 years ago, David and I had dreamed of building games that would touch people's lives, that would tell meaningful stories. We had succeeded beyond our wildest expectations. But perhaps the most meaningful story wasn't in any of our games. Perhaps it was the one we were living now, a story of loss and discovery, of secrets revealed and bridges built. Archipelago would be David's last game, his final creative legacy. But through Elliot, his influence would continue to shape Horizon long after the game was released. Not as a ghost haunting our decisions, but as a foundation supporting our future. I closed the prototype and shut down my computer. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new decisions to make. But for now, in the quiet of the office David and I had built together, I felt a sense of peace. The company was in good hands, both Elliot's and mine. The future was uncertain, as it always is, but full of possibility. And somewhere, I like to think, David was watching, proud of the bridges we were building, in game and in life.